So I bumped into this video and I found it so interesting. This man is claiming that black people were not the original inhabitants of Southern Africa and South Africa in particular. Why is this important? It's important because we are witnessing something unfolding in history whereby Donald Trump is, numerous occasions, he's been sending subtle threats to South Africa. And some of us who would overthink it would see that it's more like a proxy war between Russia and America, whereby, South Africa is part of the BRICS family. And with BRICS, during Joe Biden's presidency, we had a lot of countries joining the BRICS with their idea of having one currency. And the United States prospective president back then, who was Donald Trump at the moment, was saying if he gets in, he was going to make sure that he tariffs these countries that are planning on having their currency, because he always wants the US dollar to dominate anyway. So I want you to listen to this video and tell me what you think.
Black people are not the original inhabitants of South Africa, which, in fact, they're realizing that now. When they claimed that they owned all the land, the original inhabitants, of whom there are not many left, said, excuse me, we were the original inhabitants. You guys were migrants here as well, which they were. Okay, the original inhabitants of Southern Africa are called the Khoisan. In the West, the Bushmen are Khoisan. Hottentots are Khoisan. But you can't use those words anymore. You have to call them Khoisan. Okay? All right, now, and they were the inhabitants of the whole of Southern Africa. So the whole of South Africa, at one stage, were Khoisan. The black people originated in what is now Cameroon. That's where they...
Hold on, Khoisan aren't black?
No.
What are they?
They're a completely separate ethnicity all on their own. In fact, if you look at them, they're kind of yellowy. They're a light brown yellow color, right. But they look more Asian than African. They do not consider themselves African. When the white guys arrive in Cape Town, so 1652 is when Dutch guys arrived there. At that stage, you could have divided South Africa almost exactly 50-50, what's now South Africa. The western half of the country was entirely Khoisan. There were no black people there, none at all. Only Khoisan. So we're Cape Towners, all that area, Khoisan people. The northern part of the country did have black people. They'd started arriving, and they were still migrating.
How long had they been there in the northern?
Well, it's a moot point, and people have debated it. It would seem that black people had probably started arriving in the northern parts of South Africa, maybe 1,000 years, something like that, about 1,000 years before whites got there, right up in the north, okay? And they've been slowly moving south because it's an empty space. I mean, one of the things about Africa is it's very empty. Up until the 1950s, Africa was very empty. It's the population exploded because white colonists, the naughty white colonists, put hospitals there, and there's been this huge population explosion since the 1950s. But Africa was really very empty up until then. And so tribes moved around and just occupied new empty territory. So the guys coming down from the north, who called the Bantus, it's called the Bantu expansions, when black people came out of the Cameroons, they'd been occupying South Africa and moving systematically south, down the east coast of South Africa. They were
pastoralists, am I right?
Yeah, they were pastoralists, yeah. Whereas the Khoisan were hunter-gatherers. They were like aboriginals, okay, so they hadn't become pastoralists yet. The black guys are migrating down from the north and settling, doing exactly what white guys are doing. So white guys, the Dutch guys from Cape Town, were settling by moving eastwards. So the white guys are moving from Cape Town eastwards, and the black guys are moving down from the north. And they met at a place called the Fish River, which is now in the middle of South Africa, at a place called, it's still called Border. Everybody in South Africa calls that part of the country the border, even though there's no border there at all anymore. But there was a river called the Fish River, which is where blacks and whites first encountered each other. And then it started 100 years of warfare between whites and the Xhosa, who were the tribe that they met there. So at that point, that would have been in about 1700. So whites and blacks first encountered each other in 1700. Okay, so whites had already been there for 100 years at that point.
So much crap that we have to be taking in a day. I'm amazed. Why? Because I feel like this is a good example of why it's important to write your own history, to have your own history. That is why you cannot go to Europe right now and distort the information given about the Aborigines, or distort the information given about the Dutch, or distort information that was given about the Danes in England and Scotland, wherever. But the point is, I think Africans should now get a wake-up call. We can't sit around when our history is being distorted by people who claim they know things that they literally have no idea about. This man was a lecturer. That's the most messed up thing about it. This man was a lecturer, and he was lecturing in Durban and part of Cape Town, I think. And when you start thinking about this, and especially when you start now thinking to say he was lecturing the time when we were on apartheid, period, which means all the youngsters he was teaching this distorted history, right now they still have a mentality that says black people were not natural inhabitants of Southern Africa. So the question is, where were they coming from? He said they were coming from Cameroon. The facts are just misguided, misput. It's quite disturbing to see this. My fellow Africans, this is the moment when we need to start questioning our history and why our history is being told by people who are not us. Where is the old people to tell us history, to write our own history, to tell it to our children, to turn it into facts? Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what you think, but comment section below and tell me what you think. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow this content. Till next time.